All right, everybody, get ready. We're diving headfirst into the world of coding interviews. And let me tell you, this isn't a kiddie pool we're talking about. We've got a mountain of articles you guys sent in about acing these things, and one thing keeps popping up. Efficiency.
Yeah.
Expert speaker. It's not enough to just make the code work. It's got to really hum, right?
It's like you can build a little raft to float on, sure. But to really navigate the ocean, you can need something way more robust, like a cruise ship. Those things are built to handle thousands of passengers, tons of cargo, and still, sail smoothly. That's what we're talking about here. Code that can scale, especially in companies dealing with millions of users.
So it's like showing them you can build an entire shipyard, not just a toy boat.
Exactly. And the blueprints for that shipyard. That's where time and space complexity come in. Those are how interviewers measure how your code performs, especially as you throw more data at it. Time complexity is like, how much longer will it take if you double the information you're processing? Space complexity gets at memory usage. How much RAM is that program going to gobble up?
Okay, I'm starting to feel a little seasick, but in a good way. This is making sense. So, are you saying if they ask me to sort a deck of cards, they don't just want to see me do it, they want me to do it like a Vegas card shark?
You got it. A simple shuffle might work if you've got 6 cards. But imagine sorting 1 million. You'd need something way faster, more sophisticated. And here's the kicker. Often they actually want you to start with a basic solution, even if it's not the most efficient.
Really? Why would they want you to start with something clunky?
Think of it like, sketching out an idea before you paint the whole masterpiece. Starting basic shows how your brain works, how you break a problem down. Plus, it gives you a starting point to make it better, to optimize. You're essentially saying, okay, here's a rowboat, now let's turn it into a speedboat.
All right, I'm on board with the analogy, but how do you actually do that? How do you optimize on the fly during an interview? Talk about pressure.
Oh, for sure. And that's why practicing is so important. But when you're optimizing, it's kind of like being a detective. First, you got to find the bottleneck. What part of your code is slowing everything down or using up all the memory?
Okay, so you find the culprit. Then what? What tools do we have to speed things up?
Data structures are your best friend. Think of them like those drawer organizers, but for your data. Instead of rummaging through a messy drawer, everything has its place. Using a hash table, for example, is like having an index for your data. You need to find something. Boom, the index tells you exactly where it is.
Oh, okay. Like, I'm picturing a giant library, one of those old card catalogs. You can find any book instantly.
You got it. And sometimes the problem itself gives you clues. If they give you data that's already sorted, it's like getting a brand new deck of cards. You can use these slick techniques like the 2-pointer method. It's like having 2 people search through the same deck, one from each end. They'll find that ace of spades much faster.
That's so clever. So we're not just coding, we're strategizing like chess masters.
Exactly. It's about knowing when to use which tool and understanding the nuances of the problem. We've talked about tools, right? Well, memoization, it's like having a cheat sheet handy. You're basically storing the results of these calculations that take a while, so you don't have to keep doing them over and over again.
Ah, so you mean like remembering your work so you don't have to start from scratch every single time?
Exactly. It saves a ton of time, especially with problems where you're doing similar, smaller calculations again and again. Then there's the sliding window technique. This one's great when you're dealing with arrays, those lists, or even strings like words and sentences. Imagine trying to find the longest stretch of sunny days from the whole year of weather data. You basically slide a window across all the data, one day at a time, keeping track of the longest sunny streak as you go.
Okay, yeah, I get that. It's like when you have one of those magnifying glasses for reading tiny print and you move it across the page to focus on different parts.
Precisely. Helps you zero in on those specific chunks of data without needing to go through the entire thing over and over.
I used to think all these algorithms were kind of mysterious. But you explaining them like this, with real-life examples, it's actually clicking.
Glad to hear it. It's funny, right? We think about coding as this very abstract thing, but at its core, it's just problem solving, figuring out the most efficient way to get things done. And honestly, sometimes the best way to get those concepts is to relate them back to something tangible, something you can actually picture in your mind.
Totally. Speaking of picturing things, what about binary search? That's another one I keep hearing about.
Ah, yeah. Binary search, a classic. Especially handy when you're dealing with data that's already sorted. Think about looking up a word in a dictionary. You wouldn't start from page 1 and go one by one, would you?
No way! I'd flip to somewhere in the middle, see if I'm close to the word I need.
Exactly. That's the beauty of binary search. You keep dividing the search area in half. With every step, you get rid of a ton of possibilities. It's like that game where you guess a number, say between 1 and 100, and I tell you higher or lower. You narrow down the options super quick.
So it's all about using the fact that the data is already arranged in a specific way that gives you an advantage.
Exactly. And that's a big takeaway here. Understanding what your data looks like, how it's organized, that can often lead you to the most efficient solution. That's like, choosing the right tool for the job. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw, would you?
Definitely not. So there's this constant back and forth, it seems, between saving time versus saving space. How do you figure out which one is more important? When do you go for speed, and when do you focus on saving memory?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is, well, like a lot of things in life. It depends.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here. We've got all these cool coding tricks, ways to make things faster, more efficient. But what if, in the heat of the moment, during an interview, I just can't, summon the perfect solution?
Happens to the best of us. Remember, they're not looking for absolute perfection, that you're going to have the single best answer every time. They want to see how your brain works. So talk it through, even if your solution isn't perfect, explain your thinking, what your strategy would be.
So it's more about showing them you can problem solve than having, memorized every single algorithm.
Exactly. It's like you're showing them you can think critically, adapt on your feet, and hey, practice makes perfect, right? Sites like LeetCode, HackRank, even Algo Academy, they got tons of practice problems. And you can even try solving the same problem in a few different ways. See how the time and space trade-offs play out.
Oh, so trying different recipes for the same dish. One might be quicker but not as flavorful. Another one might take longer, but it's got that depth of flavor.
There you go. Great analogy. It's all about understanding those trade-offs, knowing which approach works best for the situation, and being able to explain why.
I'm feeling way more confident now than when we started, but there's still this part of me that's what if I can't explain myself well?
Hey, everyone struggles with that sometimes, even the most experienced programmers. It just takes practice. And remember, you're not alone. A lot of people find these concepts tough at first, but the more you work with them, the easier they become. It's kind of like learning a new language. It might feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll be fluent before you know it.
It's funny, when you think about it, this is all about thinking itself. It's not just writing code, it's how you approach any problem, how you take something big and complex, break it down into smaller pieces you can actually work with.
Absolutely. It's a way of thinking that applies way beyond just coding interviews. You're becoming a better thinker, period. A more efficient learner, someone who can adapt to new situations.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. It's not just about the technical stuff. It's about expanding how we think, becoming more well-rounded people. So for everyone listening, keep those brains buzzing. Maybe there's even more to this whole efficiency thing, a whole other level of how we think about problems, something to ponder. Till next time, keep on coding.